Hello, classmates. Good afternoon. Hello, welcome. Welcome to all. Our special luncheon guest today. Our special luncheon guest today is Ken Owen, a 1982 DePauw grad who spent nearly 2 decades as a television anchor and reporter before returning to campus in 2001 as the university's chief external communicator and liaison with news organizations. His professional efforts ensure that DePauw is a prominent voice in the conversation about higher education in America. Ken also oversees the Owen Lecture Series, which has brought individuals such as Malala, Bill Clinton, Mikhail Gorbachev to the Greencastle campus. Additionally, he has made pieces of DePauw's past more relevant and accessible. His projects include the restoration of a 1941 DePauw admission film and the creation of Monon Memories, a video compilation from every football game between DePauw and Wabash College since the Monon Bell rivalry. Since that rivalry began in 1890. A communication major and Rector scholar who as a student delivered broadcasts over WGRE, Ken's award-winning TV career included 9 years at WISH in Indianapolis. He has covered a wide range of newsmakers, including Ronald Reagan, Desmond Tutu, Paul McCartney, Lena Horne, Gerald Ford, and Billy Graham. Today, Ken is going to take us back in time to the DePauw we remember fondly, the years 1965 to 1969. Please join me in welcoming Ken Owen.
Good afternoon, friends. It is so great to be here. Linda, thank you for that wonderful introduction. That was so sweet. I, like you, love DePauw, and I never imagined I would work for DePauw. And what you're about to see is kind of a side product of the work I do. As I spent more time here, I realized how many undiscovered assets we had in the archives. By undiscovered, it means that once upon a time somebody put a film can or a roll of photographs into a box and they were kind of never looked at carefully. And so to put them in a place where you can analyze them and see them and put them in context, to me is, the older I get, the more history matters to me. It's always mattered, but I think as we all age, we realize how everything fits together. And this time in our lives, the 4 years we were here at DePauw, for me, and I'm sure for you, are the most impactful that I've had. These are your best friends. These grounds, when you walk them, they talk back to you. You hear the echoes of the past. You can hear the professors that you used to have speaking as you walk through the academic buildings. It's a special place to be. So welcome back for Alumni Reunion Weekend. The way this works is I went to the archives, and I would urge if you have 5 or 10 minutes to go up there and poke around. It's great fun. You may not leave. But I go through the newspapers, the DePauw, and I start with the day you arrive on campus, and I read every newspaper, not thoroughly, but I look at the headlines and I glean what's happened on campus, and I go through the 4 years. So what we're about to do is get in a time capsule and go back to the fall of 1965. So if you're ready to go, and bear with me because I'll probably have some technological foibles along the way. So in the years before you arrived, there were some major events here that still echo. April 28, 1956, the first Little 500 race. It took place on city streets around campus. And then, on May 11th of 1957, see, this is what I told you about. Look who came, Richard Nixon, the Vice President of the United States. He got an honorary degree from DePauw on Business and Industry Day, right in front of the brand new Roy O. West Library there. I believe he's mounting the steps of the Union Building. Again, history echoes throughout these sidewalks. And then in 1958, and I'm just setting you up for your days, NBC television broadcast our commencement. Harold Macmillan, the sitting Prime Minister of Great Britain, spoke at Blackstock Stadium, and it was televised nationally.
Ladies and gentlemen, We are on the campus of DePauw University, Greencastle, Indiana, where in Blackstock Stadium, the 119th annual commencement exercises of the university are taking place. The National Broadcasting Company is bringing you...
This was a kinescope, and President Humbert in his day was really good about saving things. The one thing we're missing is something we're about to see. 1962, the 125th anniversary of DePauw, and that same year a team of students won the GE College Bowl on national TV. We do not have film of this, and I wish we did. I've spent a lot of time looking for it, even in the archives of the universities we defeated to get to the titled match. And then we go on to June 2nd, 1962. This is a video interview of President Russell Humbert just days before his death. This was in Toledo, Ohio. He was there for some kind of a meeting, and the local TV station sat him down for an interview. So things are changing at DePauw. Our president has passed away suddenly, just about this time of the year in 1962. We go on to February 16th of 1963. We considered more than 100 candidates, and Bill Kerstetter, the president of Simpson College in Iowa. Hail to the chief, our next leader. A 15-month-long search. That had to be a real doozy. Onward we go. It's September 1965, the first weekend, and look who's here. There you are, arriving at DePauw University. These photos are from the archives. And you know, if you get in, I have this moment, and you probably too, when your parents dropped you off and the tail lights went away and you kind of watched the car disappear. That was probably the most traumatic moment of my life, because I realized I had to grow up at that moment. But this is the day that happened for you. Hasn't happened yet, Joe Allen says. Here's a look at your most impressive selves at the opening convocation on East College lawn. That shot is from the newspaper. There were 732 members of the class of 69, I should say, as the fall began. 456 men. What are we murmuring about? Something on that page is really interesting to people. 456 men, 286 women, 36 states, 6 foreign countries. 2/3 of you came from Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. 1/3 were Methodist. 40% of the guys played football. Imagine that. Lou Fontaine, and you remember Lou Fontaine was the dean of admissions, he spoke of your class's extreme potential. 45% of you finished in the top 10% of your high school class. 99% of the women were in the top quarter. 67% of men. Come on, guys. Always happens to us, doesn't it? And here are the big dollars we were seeking. You paid $1,550, $1,400 plus room and board, and then that was freshmen. By the time you graduated, it had climbed by about 1/3. The room and board had about doubled, but must have been the sensational food they were serving back then. By comparison, in 1969, a new car cost $3,500, a gallon of gas was 35 cents, average annual salary was $8,600. So here we go. Your grand 4-year adventure begins. And it starts with technology. The first ever computer on campus, a brand new IBM 1620, assisted with Rush. This is how you guys figured out which house you're going to go into. That had to be just mistake-free, right? It cost around $100,000. Classes began on September 10th of 1965. Ralph Gray was among the new faculty members who arrived that fall. A new Methodist Student Foundation building opened adjacent to Gobin Church, and last fall it came down. There it is. That was called Charter House in its final days. As you arrived, Bill Kerstetter kicked off a Design for the Decade campaign, which was aimed at creating new buildings and a renewed DePauw. And here is the great orator, President Kerstetter.
Which will accommodate chemistry, physics, mathematics, geology, and geography, a large science library, and a computing center. With such a facility, the university can anticipate advancing significantly its enviable productivity in science.
These goals do not exhaust our concerns as we plan the future of DePauw University. We intend also constantly to streamline our current budget, get the most out of our resources to achieve these purposes.
All righty. Charles Malik, the former president of the United Nations General Assembly, spoke in Meharry Hall on American citizenship in October of your freshman year. The next month, in November 1965, this might have been the greatest stunt in the long history of the Monon-Bell rivalry. It was pulled off at our expense, and here, as we heard a moment ago, is a Monon memory from 1965.
The 1965 Monon-Bell is best remembered for what happened before the game was played. DePauw president William Kerstetter fell for one of the series' all-time great pranks when he agreed to meet with someone claiming to be a Mexican dignitary. It turns out the visitor was none other than Wabash student Jim Shanks, who received a guided tour of the DePauw campus, including a peek at the Monon-Bell, which was in an up-till-then secret location. Shanks passed the inside information along to his classmates, and soon the bell was in Crawfordsville. With a strong nudge from the Wabash administration, the Little Giants returned the trophy to DePauw the day before the 1965 game, but trucks from each school were ready on game day in case another transfer would be needed. Wabash came in with a 6-2 record. DePauw was a polar opposite 2-6, but earned high marks for its goalpost decorations. The campus was still buzzing after a concert by the Isley Brothers featuring their young guitarist Jimi Hendrix. In the 72nd battle for the bell, Wabash took an early lead and never looked back. Tailback John May rushed for 137 yards, and 4 turnovers doused any Tiger hopes for victory. As their fans hoisted sombreros, the Little Giants reclaimed the bell legitimacy for the first time in 10 years and regained a 1-game edge in the all-time series.
So I've got to ask, how many of you were at the Isley Brothers Jimi Hendrix concert? Wow. Lucky, lucky, lucky. Oh, they had bands on each end of the gym. I've heard the story. Yes. Well, that's very cool. Okay. We got a lot of ground to cover. That's why I'm moving so fast. December 1965, we began planning for a new dormitory. This is the groundbreaking for what came to be known as Hogate Hall. It would be dedicated in 1968. Also in December, longtime geology professor Charles Bieber passed away. You freshmen must have been something else. In February of '66, President Kerstetter issued a new statement on student drinking. It read, and this is a quote, "DePauw University opposes the use of alcoholic beverages by its students." Now that was nothing new, but it added, "The university cannot police the off-campus action of students and leaves to young people of age and to their parents such jurisdiction." The era of liability is officially underway, folks. And that same month, the student paper, which came out 3 times a week, announced it would cut back to 2 times. And about 3 years ago, they announced they're cutting back to 1 time. The DePauw now does 1 time a week. I miss the 3 days, but I'm a former journalist. That's what I do. Little 500 weekend your freshman year. The Letterman performed at the Greencastle High School gym. It was a UB event. A mini 500 trike race for women was launched that year. Phi-Psi won it. The overall Little 500, 5 straight for them. In May, it was announced the Board of Trustees was seeking federal funds to build a new science center that Bill Kerstetter was talking about, and this is what we eventually got, if you remember that architectural marvel. On to our sophomore year, your sophomore year. The university increased women's hours. Effective in September of 1966, the gals could be out an extra half hour. These are pretty liberal policies. Till 11 Sunday through Thursday, until 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. The times, they were a-changin'. Noted University of Chicago economist Milton Friedman presented a convocation in October of your sophomore year. That same month, We 5 performed. Tickets were $2.50. And in October, the faculty approved a new pass-fail system that would take effect the following fall. Now, we had some big doings in November. At least for Greencastle, somebody grabbed $1,245 from the administration building while the staff was eating lunch on the 2nd floor. Still looking for the culprit at this point. And then it was payback time, 1966.
The agony of the 1966 football season was apparent on the face of this football player. The Tigers struggled through the campaign and had a 2-6 record heading into Monon-Bell Saturday. On the other hand, Wabash was 4-3-1 and in possession of the prize for the first time since 1955. It looked like a repeat as the Little Giants led the entire game, and even the DePauw mascot was losing hope as time went by. It was 76 Wabash after the Tigers scored and missed the extra point, and it looked to be a Little Giants victory until, with a minute 21 left, DePauw got the ball back and drove the field. And the expression on the face of Wabash assistant coach Ernie Frisch says it all. With 28 seconds to go, DePauw's Tim Feemster, who had missed a 40-yard field goal attempt in the first quarter, was good from 22 yards out. Ecstasy on the DePauw sidelines as the bell returned to Greencastle.
Yay! You'll notice there are years we don't have film, and I know they shot film in those years, and I've talked to football players who said when Tom Mott would go out and recruit them, he had these films that were just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, edited together. I think he just took the other stuff and threw it in a ravine somewhere. So under somebody's mattress is Tom Mott's highlight reel. We can find those highlights, but they're great backstories. Alrighty, the one thing that was overwhelming about looking back at your 4 years is obviously it was a time of a lot of tumult in the nation. There was a lot of conversation ongoing about the Vietnam War. A forum was held at the Duck in February 1967 as the U.S. death toll surpassed 6,000. And I love this photo from the 67 Mirage. Is the draft hanging over your head, reads that banner. It's cut off here, sadly, but this video will be up on YouTube at some point, so you can go back and see it, but it is up there. Is the draft hanging over your head as two students walk under the banner? In March, you were treated to a concert by Charlie Bird. He was known for bringing bossa nova to America. In the same issue of the DePauw, Dean Lawrence Riggs, just back from a conference in Chicago, he admitted there is little accurate information available on the amount of drugs college students were using. Look at the headline, is describes a word? Maybe there were funny things happening on our campus. April, Senators Gail McGee and George McGovern were here debating the U.S. policy toward Vietnam at Goben Church. Here's a blurry scan of the photo that was in the DePauw from that day. DePauw has always attracted newsmakers and continues to. 5 years later, of course, we know that George McGovern was the Democratic nominee for president. April brought a concert by Glenn Yarborough. Remember that hit, Baby the Rain Must Fall? And the Bronze Monument commemorating the founding of the Society of Professional Journalists, which was then known as Sigma Delta Chi, was dedicated on East College lawn in April 1967. Okay, you're now juniors. September 1st, 1967, Hubert Humphrey, Vice President of the United States, visits DePauw. And there he is greeting. That's actually the side street, I think, between Goben Church and East College. 4 days later, a report in the DePauw said the average campus grade point average had hit an all-time high. 2.86 for women, and come on, guys. Is there a trend developing here? 2.64 for men. And that made 23 consecutive years of the guys trailing the ladies. I'm hoping that at some point I'll be up here and I can say, finally lapped them. I don't think it's going to happen. And there's a good reason for that. September 1967, the Catman, Ted Catula, was appointed director of the Student Union and assistant dean of students. How I miss Ted. And Air Force ROTC enrollment hit a record low at DePauw as the Vietnam War raged on. October, Old Gold, Ramsey Lewis was on campus to perform. 50 DePauw students traveled to the nation's capital for a huge anti-war protest that fall. 100,000 marched to the Pentagon. And it's November, and we have to go back and see what happened with our friends up north.
After the close shave of the year before, Tony Rome opened in theaters across America, the Monon Bell had been missing for almost a year. As the 1967 game day approached, a UPI story traced the theft to 7 DePauw students. Remember, DePauw had the bell. They said if certain tools were brought on game day, the bell could be recovered. DePauw came into the big game at 6-1-1. A win would give the Tigers their best season since 1951. And this early run looked promising for the home squad. Wabash, on the other hand, was 1-7 and a 3-touchdown underdog, according to the Indianapolis Star. But turnovers can change everything in a bell game, and DePauw caught the ball out 7 times on this afternoon. The scoreboard still showed loose ends in the third quarter, but this DePauw fumble turned out to be a game changer. Wabash recovered, and a few plays later, Mike Henry takes it in from 2 yards out. And look here, the visitors' bench goes wild. There was some other action that didn't amount to points. The team debut shortly after the scoring play. And it was around this same time that the bell, which had been buried in the north end of Blackstock Stadium, was unearthed. As the game neared its conclusion, you could barely tell the home team from the visitors. What made Wabash's jerseys interchangeable with their rivals, and this DePauw player definitely needed the Maytag man. With time running out, a desperate Tiger heave. It led to the day's fourth interception in a game where DePauw completed only 6 passes. And as time expired, things got out of hand once again. The mud-covered Little Giants left Blackstock Stadium victorious, and a Wabash truck collected the now recovered Mona Bell, parading it past the visitor stands for all to see. Soon another winner would arrive, along with questions about what will the Bell game be like next year.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, the calendar now turns to 1968. Harold Macmillan, now the former British Prime Minister, returned for a speech. Also in January, new rules allowed upper-class women to keep later hours. Oh my gosh, we're really getting crazy here. Up to 2:30 a.m., 8 times per semester. Did you have... Were there punch cards? Could you maybe swap? You know, I'll give you 2 lunches for a... Anyway, February, this is big news. The 4 tops were announced. They came in March of that year. April 4th of 1968, a horribly sad day for our nation and your class that we continue to think about. A local march was held to remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There were a series of meetings that month on a thorny issue, whether men and women should be allowed to study together behind closed doors. Vietnam and men and women, I don't know. April 24th, this sounds familiar. 200 students protested at Mason Hall calling for student power and saying the administration wouldn't listen to them. Some things are constant. 2 days later, Smokey Robinson, along with the Miracles, performed for you guys. That's April. And smoke damage was left by an arson fire in Longden Hall as the year wrapped up. In May, it destroyed a couch. Lucky that's all it was. Now the final lap, your senior year. There were lots of thorny discussions going on. Still, Greencastle considered City Ordinance 1968-6, which defined certain acts as misdemeanors and providing penalties therefor. It covered topics such as visitation in bedrooms of the opposite sex, pornographic comic and art books, dives in Greencastle? Toppers, yes. And burning waste. And you guys fought it as students because it seemed like the Greencastle City Council was picking on you. 5 students that year were denied the right to vote, which also prompted protests. In October, Charles Evers, the Mississippi Field Secretary for the NAACP, spoke here. He said, we've had nothing but separation all our lives. What are we going to do with it? This is our country, black and white. Kurt Vonnegut came to campus the fall of your senior year. And in November of 1968, Francois Mitterrand, the head of the socialist left in France and a candidate for president in that country in 1965, was here for a convocation. The 4th and final Monon Bell of your college term, November 1968.
The fall of 1968 was busy at DePauw with the opening of a new women's dorm, Hogate Hall, an Old Gold concert by Stan Getz, and it was a presidential election year. At a time when a local bar had a soft drink sign and call waiting was still several years away, Owen Jim received an important delivery from the postman. A message for Tom Mont and his coaching staff, postmarked November 5th, read, "Don't worry about Indiana State, that game doesn't count. Get ready for Wabash. They beat you 7-0 last year because you wasted time preparing for Indiana State." It added ominously, "Don't forget your job depends on beating Wabash." Very influential office. California's Fresno Youth, which had a list of its game day predictions, had DePauw, which was 5-3, winning 32-13. 11 days later, with the all-time series tied, was the day of decision, and the guy they called the Pot was ready to take charge. Late in the first quarter, DePauw sophomore quarterback Roy Pottinger connected with Scott Ralston on a 19-yard pass. It set up a quarterback sneak a few plays later that gave the Tigers a 6-0 lead. With 11:33 left in quarter number 2, Wabash signal caller Dave Knott found Steve Mihalko in the corner of the end zone, making it 7-6 home team. DePauw's John Sacramento made this 20-yard field goal before halftime, and the teams went to the locker room with the guys in black and gold leading 9-7. It became a 5-point lead after Sacramento made a 34-yarder late in the third. The Little Giants were about to get the ball back late in the game when they were called for roughing the punter here. DePauw kept possession and made hay, sealing the contest when fullback Bill Holton plowed in from 1 yard out with 1:37 left to go. DePauw ran a record 88 offensive plays and held the ball for almost 41 minutes. Yes, influential alumnus, like the Postal Service, they delivered.
Credit to Bill Wagner, our great sports information director. He found that postcard just a couple of years ago in a drawer, and I wonder if Ivan sent that. You better beat Wabash or else. No, I'm with you on that one, Jim. It's interesting, too, that in thinking about Tom Mott, how many of you guys played for Tom Mott while you were here? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Tom sent that postcard. No, you know, he was a great master of psychology, and I could see him putting that in the mail, getting it, reading it to the guys, and pretending it came from some alumnus in Terre Haute. Okay, onward we go. In December of 1968, we know Bob Farber well, what a great man. Our dean told the University Council, we need to do more to make DePauw accessible to underprivileged students. At that point, there were 24 students of color on campus. January 1969, we're rolling toward commencement. The faculty committee changed it to 31 courses required for graduation, down from 33. So they dumbed it down just as you were leaving. You guys are the smart guys. On to January 31st, President Kerstetter decided to give a speech instead of answer questions about black admissions, and the students walked out in protest. February 7th of 1969, the Temptations played for you. Tickets were $5. The Collegians cut a new record that spring. And as we just saw in the Monon Memory, Hogate Hall was dedicated February 18th, adopted its own rules, because it was an independent women's dorm, adopted its own rules of open visitation in private rooms. So things are changing still. February 27th, the university rejects a student proposal that living units have autonomy. A packed house in Meharry Hall, and look at the people in the balcony. The balcony there can't support people to that degree anymore. That's back in the day. March 14th, 40 student protesters confronted a Marine recruiter at the Union Building. And April 18th, this was a full-page ad in the DePauw, which says a lot about the times we were in. April 22nd of 1969, winter term is approved. May 3rd of that year, the Byrds performed. And now, to May 25th, 1969, there you are, in all your glory. The speaker at the commencement that year, the 130th commencement for DePauw, was Dr. Merriman Cunningham, who was the president of the Danforth Foundation. And I heard that. I don't remember that at all. That's what most people say. I was there, really? Dr. Cunningham said, "Times are out of joint." This is actually a pretty powerful speech. I pulled these quotes from the DePauw Alumni magazine after the fact. "You are not the starry-eyed bunch of unsophisticates of my day, and you know you've been called upon to reject and protest the fact that these times are out of joint." He said that protest, stripped of the excesses of violence, is one of the great constructive activities of our day. He said the national scene needs courage for action and people who believe there is some value in their traditions. This is a time of despair and of unparalleled opportunity. What it will be for you depends on your choice. And look at the graduates. I love these pictures. May 25th, 1969. Okay, we have some fun facts as we start moving the car toward the parking lot and its final resting spot. Fun facts: in 1965, you came in, there were 732, 526 made it to the finish line. Yeah, Boffman, Youst, those other legendary professors were not easy. There were 2,280 students here in the spring of 1968. Actually, that should be spring of 1969. 50 years later, we had 2,060 this spring. There were 190 faculty, full-time and part-time in 1968. We have 228 today. 82 acres was the campus in DePauw University, of DePauw University in 1966. We're at 695 today, but that's due in large part because we added the DePauw Nature Park, which I'd encourage you to visit, 520 acres. We added that land in 2004, a gift from the company that had been using it as a quarry. The endowment was $14.3 million in 1966. At last report, it's about $740 million. And those buildings that Bill Kerstetter, our buddy, talked about in Design of a Decade, well, the Julian Science and Math Center opened in 1976 and was expanded, as you see on the right, and renovated about 10 years ago. It's now known, I'm sorry, I just jumped a line. It was renovated and doubled in use in 2003. This building, same deal. Left is old, right is today. The Performing Arts Center opened in 1976, expanded, renovated about 10 years ago. It's now the Green Center for the Performing Arts, thanks to Judson and Joyce Green, 1974 graduates, 74 and 75. And Bowman Gym, I really miss Bowman Gym. What an architectural marvel that was. I mean, really, the doorknobs in that building were like beautiful. It came down right after my graduation in 1982. A few months before then, the state-of-the-art Lilly Center had opened. In the last few years, that building has also gotten a new look. As you see, that's the old Lilly Center on the left, Bowman Pond now gone, and on the right is the Lilly Center as it looks today. Another place I'd encourage you to look at and check out the fitness center, which my classmate Scott Welch made possible, is out of this world. East College, I don't know how many of you know, but in the 1970s, there was talk of taking East College down, putting a series of buildings on that land, and Ardith Burkhardt, dear Ardith Burkhardt, is responsible for creating public television in Indianapolis. She went door to door and created the motion that created WFYI TV. But Ardith talked them into saving the building, and it thrives today. What would we be without that symbol of our university? 4 new residence halls are now planned for the South Quad, so the days of Hogate Hall, which went up while you were here, are numbered. And the Owen Lecture Series was launched in 1986 with a speech by Colorado Governor Richard Lamb. He talked about the need for health care reform in 1986. Probably use that again today. We've had many, many people since. Margaret Thatcher, you see Bill Clinton there. David Cameron has been here, Malala. Many, many, more than 110 people. All the expenses have been covered by the gift of Tim and Sharon Oven, class of 1958. And I have the pleasure of running the series. And there's Tim making friends with a robot. Now, Clayton, if you can come up, because I did make a late game substitution on my schedule here because I was thinking about your class, and singling people out isn't fair because there are so many of you that are so powerful and so wonderful. But then I got to thinking, how many classes at liberal arts colleges across America in any reunion year can claim this? And I think you know where I'm going, but we'll just play a little snippet of this, but your classmate Dan Quayle, Vice President of the United States, and again, this does not happen often on a college campus that you can talk to a reunion class, and politics aside, it's a cool thing. And I didn't know it was going to be this complicated. Tell you what, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. No, don't worry about it. I'll send you the link. It's not that visually scintillating. I just wanted to kind of tie it back together to your class. What I do want to say, really don't worry about it. It's okay. Thank you for your help. I do appreciate it. Oh, and there it is. Well, thank you, Clayton. Let's give Clayton a hand for his...
Thank you, Chairman Ford, for your many courtesies. President, Mrs. Reagan, Vice President, Mrs. Bush, fellow citizens.
But again, regardless of politics, that's a pretty cool thing, class of 1969. So I will say to you in closing, DePauw is the place it is because we come back, we revisit with each other, we have great friends, we celebrate, we love each other, and we give back. And I thank you for all the many things you've done for this place over the years. DePauw, as you know, has changed a lot in the last 50 years, but in many, many ways, fundamentally, is still the same. It's a place that transforms young lives, and I was out at lunch yesterday, and I heard a couple of guys behind me talking up DePauw, and it's a great thing when you're around people from our school, because the pride is strong, the traditions are amazing. There are very few schools that can claim the things that we have. Thank you for letting me share some memories with you today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you individually, and I'll be around, because Glenn Gass, who's your next speaker, I'm like the utility infielder who's hitting second. Glenn's the power hitter batting cleanup, but Glenn's presentation is can't miss. And if you've never seen Glenn before, you'll really enjoy it. I know Dave Bomer probably made that possible, but Glenn's a dear friend. You will really enjoy his presentation on the Beatles. Thank you for letting me be a part of your weekend. I hope to visit with you as the weekend goes on, and welcome back to DePauw. We love having you here.